Welcome to my podcast. This is Ann P. of Fiber, Floss, and Fiction, and I'm coming to you today on Thursday, the 27th of February, 2020. I hope everyone is well. I am, obviously, back from Stitches West in the Bay Area. Had a wonderful time, enjoyed meeting a few folks who know me in cyberspace, but this was the first time I had met them live and in person, so that was great. Really enjoyed that. And yeah, just in general, it was a really good show. Super busy. Stitches West tends to be kind of that show. It's kind of always the busiest and over the top. Let's see, I got there on Wednesday and we did a little bit of setting up. The yarn guys had already gotten started. We finished set up on Thursday morning. I taught a 3-hour class on Thursday afternoon. Then we had marketplace preview Thursday night. I taught 2 classes on Friday. Then we had the fashion show at the end of that evening. Then I taught again Saturday afternoon and Sunday morning and worked in the booth otherwise. And then we broke the booth down after the marketplace ended on Sunday at 4. I got to bed about midnight, and I got up at 3:30 a.m. to get to the airport, and I'm not young enough to do that anymore, apparently. I used to get by with very little sleep, but that is not the case anymore. Monday was a very long day back. But I am home, currently kind of getting back into the swing of things, so thought I would get a video done today. And yeah, not back out again on the road until it's like the 24th, 5th, 6th, 7th, I think, of March. So I'm home for about a month before I head out to Hartford. So hoping that this is going to be a little bit shorter today. The first version I filmed was, so I'm going to see if I can make that happen again for this go round. I don't know, technical difficulties, and there was no voice recorded whatsoever. So I'm going to give this a try again, and hopefully this time will take. So onward to knitting. The good news was I got a lot of things done while I was in transit, and the first of those is my Spectre sweater. Now, I know I had told you guys I was not going to stress about getting it done, and while I didn't stress about it, I decided on Sunday, before I left Wednesday, that I wanted to finish it, so I had all the sleeves left to knit. Okay, so I actually did that between my flight out and a few nights in the room. I finished this up so that I could wear it Saturday to teach in when I was teaching a yokes sweater class, because that is the construction of this sweater. So again, the pattern is Spectre by Joji Locatelli, and it is knit in 4 colorways of my Woolly Wonka Ayrton sock, which is the merino cashmere nylon base, starting up here with Unicorn for the yoke, Hidcoat for the lavender, Scottish Heather for the medium purple, and Miss Fanny Price for the darkest purple down there at the bottom. I pretty much followed the pattern as written. I extended the length of the sleeves just a little bit, but that's pretty standard for me, and that's an easy modification to make. The yoke, it is a top-down yoke, so you cast on here, and beautiful textured twisted stitches on the yoke, which gives way to a knit 1 purl 5 ribbing for the rest of the body and the sleeves while you're working this fun multicolored fade. So all of my colors, yes, I was very happy with how this turned out, and just makes me smile every time I wear it. This is going to be the featured garment project for the Knitter's Journey Club for the second of the 3 kits that I'm offering this year. This will be one of the colorways, and I have the other 4 colorway samples dyed, and they should, yeah, 4, is that right? 3. The other 3 colorway samples died. So there's a total of 4 colorway offerings in the fade that I will have up in the shop. The listing is already there. Thank you to those of you who have already purchased a subscription for that kit. We'll be knitting that from April through the end of July. And just like the beekeeper cardigan, this sweater will also, or this part of the club will also have supporting videos to talk about some of the techniques in it and give you some hints on things like how to deal with the fade, and if you'd like to work the ribbing inside out, which Hohi suggests you do, so that you're doing the knit 5 purl 1 to make the ribbing as opposed to having to do all this purling. So if you're interested in that, like I said, the listing is already up, as well as the listing for the cowl that we're going to be doing in conjunction with that uses the same cashmere blend base. But the colorways for this are coming shortly. The yarn is dyed, it just needs to be dried and photographed so I can get that uploaded for y'all by Monday. Club orders will be open through March and into April if you are interested. Okay, next piece I finished up. It is not blocked and the ends are not woven in, but the knitting is done, is my Herald shawl. Pattern is by Janina Kaleo, not sure if either of those is correct, and the pattern name is Herald. This I was knitting from one skein of a merino bamboo blend roving that I spun myself from Funky Carolina. The colorway is Emo Princess. This is a really straightforward knit. It's garter stitch and yarn over, knit 2 together patterning in it. The main thing you have to know about this is that it's very helpful to put a hanging marker on the right side so you know what the right side is all the time, because all of the even numbered rows, the wrong side rows are just work back. You just knit the stitches. Except for the beginning stitch. And it's an asymmetrical triangle that's shaped with the use of increases on both the front and the back rows, meaning on right side and wrong side rows. So you get this nice shape, which, you know, is about perfect. It'll grow a little when I block it, but a good size and shape to wear like one of the kerchief cowls. And this was, the original skein was like 451 yards, and I used, I would say all but about 18 to 20 yards of it to knit this. So, you know, it's not massive, but it's good sized. And used up a skein of handspun that I had lurking in stash. So this will be blocked and labeled and sent to the Madison Knitters Guild for their charity, one of the charities that they support. So looking forward to that. Okay, so I have talked about it in my previous video. If you're interested in the download for it, the Knit 20 in 20 challenge that Helen Stewart at Curious Handmade is hosting. This started last month, or I guess February 1st, so not quite last month, but earlier this month. And she has a list of different types of patterns or different techniques on the list of 20 things that she's challenging knitters to be interested in doing for the month or for the year of 2020. So it's some basic things like a pullover, socks, a shawl, and then some techniques, so things like cables, lace, brioche, color work, and then some things like deep stash or an advent or scrappy type collection of yarns, that sort of thing. And she's encouraging folks to feel like they can utilize one project to cover several of the prompts. So for instance, the Spectre sweater obviously is a pullover sweater, and then it had short rows to shape the back of the neck, so there's short rows. The Herald shawl was a shawl, obviously. I think I also utilized it for deep stash and maybe for lace. I can't remember if I checked it off on that or not, but several things with those 2 projects are now off that list. So that's kind of fun and very motivating because I do love me a good challenge, as you all know who know me. So I'm going to continue kind of working on those this year. I have several projects that I've earmarked for the prompts, and when we get there, we'll share, kind of what those prompts are that I've chosen the projects for. So I have 2 new projects to talk to you all about. The first of which is the first of Helen's Sock Society 3 patterns that it just came out yesterday. These are her luminary socks. This is a set of 6 socks to be knit kind of over the next several months. I probably won't get all of them done, but she releases 1 a month, and it gets you the 6 in the collection that are all themed on things to do with light and the sky and stars and celestial bodies. So these are the first ones. And I decided to use a skein I'd had in stash of Ocean Wind Knits Blueface Leicester sock yarn. So it's a superwash. I don't have a colorway name for this, but I think of it as, as verdigris, because it's that pretty kind of weathered coppered green color. And so I cast these on yesterday. Sorry, I've got a hair stuck to me. And am this far now. So not super difficult. 1 by 1 twisted ribbing. They have some textured pattern here and a very simple little like 3-stitch lace pattern here. The rest, I'll show you the back of them. The rest of the sock is just plain stockinette. I do think that these socks would lend themselves to a slightly variegated or speckled dye would be another one that you could use on these if you didn't want to do a tonal dye. I opted for this because A, I thought it would be very pretty, and B, it was already wound. So I grabbed it, tossed it on the needles, and got started on it. So working on those, no deadline or anything on them. I'm just going to work on them as I have time, and they're like an enjoyable, relaxed project for me in that way. So the next thing that I'm going to be starting, and I wanted to just let you guys know, the Yarn Guys and I have had many requests, and we've decided that we're going to go ahead and they're going to start bringing the DK weight superwash merino silk wool yarn that I dye to all the shows that they do, as well as stock it in their shop. And so you'll be able to now also order the DK weight in the Nimue. And one of the things I normally like to do is knit up some samples. So we have those in the booth and to sort of show off the yarn. So I have decided that I'm going to start with the Soldanta crop. Caitlin Hunter is the designer on this. So it's a slightly cropped, slightly boxy, short sleeved. The whole thing is color work with 4 colors project that it will work up perfectly in that yarn. And I thought that would be kind of a fun top for the end of spring, changeable season kind of layering piece. So I'm going to be doing it in similar colors to this. I've got kind of a dark chocolate brown and the 2 colors of teal. The color I've picked for here has less pink in it. I wanted something a little different that would go with other things. But this is going to get cast on. I finished dyeing the yarn for it today, and it's actually almost dry because we're having a sunny, warm-ish day here. It's in the low 50s. So this is on the needles next, so you guys will see that next time I'm back to talk to you all. So really looking forward to having that for the wardrobe. Okay, so that is the end of knitting, and let's go on to books. So I have 2 books to talk about this week that I finished, more currently in process, but the ones that I finished. I have finished the audiobook called The Ghost Bride, and this is by the author Yangtze Chu. I read one of her books last year and really enjoyed it. This book is also set in Malaysia, as the one I read last year was, and the one I read last year focused a little bit more on. It was more reality-based fiction with an overtone of this kind of Malaysian legend about these creatures who can change from men to tigers, and they're the man-eating tigers that hunt people in the dark of the jungle kind of thing. So there were some aspects of legend and myth and magic in it, but it was kind of still more rooted in reality. This book is kind of the flip of it. It's set in the 1890s in Malaysia. The book opens, the main character is a young woman who's in her late teens, so she's, I think, 17 or 18. Her father is a widower, so she's not had a mother basically her entire life. She barely remembers her mother. She's been raised by her nurse, and her father was kind of upper middle class and a scholar, and he has become an opium addict since the death of his wife, and so he's slowly eating his way through the family no longer fortune. So they live in kind of a genteel poverty. And the book opens with him telling her that he's been contacted by this very well-respected, very well-off local family who are Chinese, of Chinese ancestry like they are. And they've recently had their son, who is the heir to the household and their business, pass away suddenly. And so they have asked if she, our heroine, will marry the deceased young man and be his ghost bride. So this was, from what the story has told us and just some Googling that I did, this was something that occasionally happened in the Chinese culture, where usually it was the male who died, the man who died, and then there would be a woman married to him posthumously, and she would become his widow from a legal perspective, and she would move into his family and be part of his family's household. And she was expected, kind of in return for this, to be the person who kept up the funeral offerings and always not worshipped, but reverenced the deceased ghost. And normally, if this occurred, it was usually something where, let's say the heir to a family had never married, but he had a mistress and children and died unexpectedly. And in order to legitimize the children so that there were heirs to carry on the family name, they would marry the mistress to the deceased person, and the children would be legitimized, and she would have some protection from the family name, and the children would be brought up as if they had been legitimate children of the person who had died. This instance is a little bit different because Li Lin, who's our main character, she was unaware of this young man. He, I guess, had seen her at some outdoor event and had been asking questions about her because he was interested in possibly asking for her hand in marriage. And she was basically unaware of who he was and was not in love with him, but he had fallen head over heels in love with her. And so as far as he was concerned, when he was alive, she was a potential bride, but she's horrified that her father would even ask this, and kind of creeped out, as you might guess, and does not want to marry this young man posthumously. So we get to that point in this story, and this is only maybe the first sixth of the story, and then she starts having these weird nightmarish dreams where the ghost of this young man appears to her in the dreams, and she eventually seeks out the help of a medium who tells her that she's being haunted and gives her this sleeping draft to try to sleep better at night and not let the ghost of this young man infiltrate her dreams. And so this kicks off this series of events because she almost overdoses on the opium that's in this brew and winds up becoming disassociated from her corporal body. So she is now in the spirit world. And she basically has this whole quest and exploration of the spirit world to go through the plane of death, plane, not pain, plane of death. And she meets these other spirits, and she kind of comes to find out why this young man's been haunting her. And then she has to complete her quest and try to get back into her body before the link between her physical form and her spirit form is severed, and she becomes a ghost herself. So lots of sort of fantasy, magical, mystery, mysterious ghost stories type stuff going on in it for the latter part of the book. Because I listened to this on audio, I really love the fact that the author, I also listened to the other book by this author as an audiobook, and she read both of them, which I really, really liked. First off, she has a lovely voice and accent and presentation. Secondly, she's the author, so I think sometimes when the author can be also the reader, assuming they're good at reading out loud, which she is, it gives you a better feeling for certain ways she wanted characters to be presented by how she inflects the things she says and just her presentation of the story. And this author is, I believe, 6th generation of Chinese. And so she's coming at this from a place where she grew up in Malaysia. She speaks not only Mandarin Chinese, but she also speaks a local dialect. She speaks British English. And all of those things you can hear when she lapses into like a phrase that the nurse says in Mandarin. I think it's Mandarin and not Cantonese. Anyway, whatever the dialect is that the nurse speaks, it just rolls off her tongue. There's no hesitation, and her pronunciation, I'm sure, is great because she's grown up speaking all of these different languages. She does a wonderful job of describing the late 19th into the early 20th century kind of melding of all of these cultures. So there was the local Malaysian population, the Chinese who came as immigrants, of course the Dutch who were there as colonials, and then the British after the Dutch. So there's sort of all of these different melting pot phrases and words and customs, and I think that part of the book is my favorite part of the book. I didn't like this one quite as much as the other one of hers that I read, but I still enjoyed it, and I still really like her writing. So I'm going to recommend that one, and as always, I'll put Goodreads links below to the books. So the next book that I finished was a book called The 10,000 Doors of January. The author is Alex Harrow. And I mentioned this one briefly in my previous podcast where I said, you know, if you like young adult fantasy, go and get yourself this book. I'm going to stand by that review. The book has all of the things in it that I tend to like. It has a great heroine. It has really nicely written passages that are very evocative, great world building. There's adventure and growing pains, but the young woman in the book really grows into herself, and yeah, loved it. The main premise is that our heroine, we track her from the time she's about 7 through the time she's late teens, so 18. And she is, for all intents and purposes, the ward of a rich gentleman here in America, in Vermont. She lives with him at his huge house, and her father, who is still alive, works for this man, but he is gone most of the time. He's employed by this rich entrepreneur to scour the globe to find antiquities of great rarity, most of which have something to do with an occult kind of feeling to them. And it's all kinds of things that probably a museum wouldn't want. They're all one of a kind. So her father's off on these grand adventures, and he sends boxes of things home to his boss. He's very rarely there to see his daughter, so she's pretty much being raised by this wealthy man as his surrogate child, and so she's got a tutor and a nursemaid and all these other things, but she is a very independent thinker. So the story progresses. We find out what happened to her mother, and we find out the backstory for her father, and all of these things put into the start, a chain of events that will influence January's life and decisions she makes. And like I said, the writing was absolutely wonderful. So much great imagery in it. And there's all kinds of fun things wrapped into it about the power of words and books and learning, and the power of standing up for who you are, even if you're somebody who's an oddity, which this young lady is, on many different levels. And kind of following the path to see where it leads you. So a great book. I don't want to spoil too much with the details because there's a lot that's unfolded very slowly, which I loved. There are so many places in this book that I had this sort of visual picture moment where I thought that would make a great colorway palette, or that would be a really cool sketch, or I would love to have a piece of artwork that is this that the author's describing. So I read this with a small group of friends for the February, our monthly book club. Really, really enjoyed it. So it had been in my to be read pile, and I'm glad that I had an excuse to do that. So if you like that kind of young adult genre of sort of fantasy reading, go out and get yourself this book. I don't think you'll regret it. Okay, let's talk briefly on cross stitch. So first and foremost, let's talk about what I mostly worked on the last couple of weeks, and that is Once Upon a Fairy Tale. You may remember or not that I started in this section right here, which is kind of the center bottom, and I'm not really doing this by the pages as they're marked on the original chart because I'm using Pattern Keeper. So what I did is I blocked myself out what was going to be 1,000 stitches across here, which basically got me across this doorway. And then I was just going to come down an even 800 stitches, but there's a partial page down here that's about, I think it's 400 stitches deep, so it's not quite half a page. So I wound up doing 840 stitches deep. So I have an 8,400 stitch rectangle that I'm working on as a page, which is more than the typical Heaven and Earth design pages. So I'll be a little bit farther along on it, which is fine, but I eventually want to get to the white horse. Excuse me. Sorry. Not sure where that came from. Okay, so that's what that mock-up looks like. And here is my current progress on this monster. So I have done almost all of the book down here. There's a couple of random ninja stitches that still need to be done. I have done most of the sky part up here and the white magic lips, and a fair amount of the lettering. Sorry, here, can't even see. There's an extensive amount of confetti in this section, so I'm getting to that slowly but surely. More confetti over here as well. So this will be out again in March. I only have it tapped for about 1,000 stitches, which is for a challenge with semi-sane stitchers. Will not be enough to complete this block, but it'll get me pretty close. So soon that will happen. I did finish up the first of the National Parks challenges with that in the Full Coverage Fanatics group. So that was kind of fun. And then I'm just going to work on that. And like I said, it will be out in March. We'll see how far I get on it, and there'll be more to come in my plans. Okay, the other thing I've worked on since the last time that I saw you guys, I grabbed what I thought was the bag that has this project in it, which was not the right bag. And when I opened it thinking, well, I'll just work on whatever's in here, I didn't have a needle with me in California, so I worked on nothing stitch related for almost a week. However, I had 500 stitches to put into this project for Cheryl McKinney's group for one of the monthly prompts for February. That was my last one to do, so I wanted to get it done before this weekend. This is Christmas Morning Pets. It's a Dimensions Gold Collection Petite. And here's where this is. I have mostly finished the hat, and I've done more of the gray, barely there gray, cream, off-white, other neutral color of your choice. That's the fuzzy part. And I came down here and I put in the edging of the dog's ear. So I still have the face of the dog to do and the big paws, and then the curve of the hat kind of comes around this way with more of that white and gray. Cat is almost done except for back stitching. I think I have just a couple stitches left to do in there to finish the actual stitched part. Super cute, but that's where this is for this month. I'm not sure when it'll come back out, but it will come back out. This is part of my Stitch 20 in 20 list. Which, if you're new to the channel, I decided that I was going to challenge myself to get 20 finishes of some kind, whether it was a page finish on a full coverage piece or a page finish on another large design or a finish on a smaller design. So I have 3 done, 17 left to do. That is one of them on the list. So going to talk really quickly about plans. This month, coming up in March, I kind of know my big project plans because I've got them mapped out based on challenges. So in Full Coverage Fanatics, we're going to be moving on in our Around the World Challenge to visit Canada. And I'm going to be using my Winter's Encounter project for that, which is the horse with the little bird in the snowstorm, because Canada has a lot of snow. I thought that would be perfect. It will give me a chance to hopefully finish off the last few hundred stitches, assuming Kim Spartan Stitcher has correctly estimated that number for me. 500 or so that I have left to do on that one and get a page finish there. I've got 1,000 stitches to do on Fairy Tales. I have 1,000 stitches to do on a stitching shelf for Semi-Sane Stitcher prompts for their Around the World Challenge, where we're visiting Ireland, I believe it is, this month. And I am working on a couple-week challenge in Cheryl McKinney's group here the last few days of February, and then it will take me into the beginning of March to finish these, because there's, I think, 10 prompts, where I'm going to be stitching a lot on my Desert Mandala from Chatelaine. I think I have 4 or 5 of those prompts that fit that, so I'm going to try to get another 1,000 or so stitches into that project, and then some smaller things in between. I think that's it for plans. Hang on, I'm going to just open my day book, my crafting day book, and let you all know that. Oh, and I will also be having a new start on Nora Corbett's Halloween Fairy with Belinda over at Aussie Stitcher. We're going to be doing a new start Mirabilia / Nora Corbett for March. If you're interested and you have a project lined up, please feel free to jump in and work on that with us. But yeah, I'm kind of excited to start on that one and get some progress in on it. So I think that is it for today. I am going to try to come back next week about this time and film, because I think I need to skip the following week. And I don't want to go 3 full weeks in between. I just think it's too long. This is already going to be 35 minutes or so. However, until next time I talk to you, I hope you all are well in your corner of the world. Again, thank you for joining me to hear me talk about what I'm working on today. Hope you found something of interest, and if you like it, please click the subscribe button below. I would love to have you be a subscriber and come back and visit with me soon. So until I talk to you again in a couple of, it won't even be a couple of weeks, in probably a week, I hope you all have a great one, and I will talk to you then. Be well.